Samson,
Sir.
you're a breathwork facilitator. You went to Peru in the Amazon for a dieta by the Shipobo people. It was a 14-day practice with plants. Remember, you're eating with plants. And it was like this crazy sort of diet thing that you went on, I was looking at. You've lived in third world conditions of Nigeria. You have studied ancient history and philosophy and experienced it in person in the pyramids, I'm thinking, was in the pyramids, and tombs of Egypt. Holy hell. You've spoke to and healed hundreds of people. You're an athlete and you've coached pro athletes. And I think the most impressive thing that you have, just from my own opinion, is this deep masculine presence, which enables people to feel and achieve. And I want to know, because you had a recent post of yours and it said, find your breath, find your body. What's your meaning behind that?
Find your breath, feel your body, free your mind. That's not something I came up with. That was almost like a, if you will, like principles, guiding principles that can sort of communicate on some level the essence of what I do, and support people in doing it, which is created by a friend, Clay Ebert, who's a phenomenal genius when it comes to marketing and stuff. But what that means to me, and it's evolved over time, I almost feel like I just have it there as a thing to have there. When we do find our breath, and by finding, I mean reconnecting with this tool or gift that we have that tethers us to life itself. When we reconnect with that, it supports us in grounding in the present moment where we can feel our body. And feeling our body, the only concretized aspect of ourselves, meaning it's the only concretized aspect of who we are that is in the present. So the body is nowhere else but here. When we feel it, we are also engaging. If we're willing to be open to it, we're engaging with the wisdom of now. So by feeling the body, well, finding the breath, feeling the body, we now get to free the mind that is oftentimes imprisoned by erratic thoughts or the lack of being present because we're not in the body. So those three are almost principles for removing ourselves from everywhere else so we can be where our feet are. Yeah.
And for you, where did you find like where your mind would used to go everywhere else? Because I know like for a practice, you would have practiced this, right? All the time. So I was like, where did your mind used to go before you went, oof, I need to bring this back out?
I mean, my mind still goes. I don't think the mind will ever stop going. So it's always a reminder, and my mind can go anywhere. I mean, I have a family. I'm married with 2 children. So as the protector, as a provider, as, you know, the fire and energy tender of my family, you know, my mind does go to how can I better serve, you know, my girls? How can I better serve, you know, the people that I'm supporting? How can I better show up in the world? And my mind sometimes goes to the things that I'm still, per se, learning to accept about myself, right? So conditioning and programming that still come through my unconscious. My mind will go to when I'm not present, how can I be better? My mind goes to various type of things. My mind goes to sometimes what life was like 2,000 years ago. So my mind travels, right? But again, when I am consciously breathing, I pull it back. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And listen to this one. It's essential for us to tend to our hearts to free ourselves from the burdens we carry within us, so we are not overtaken from them becoming the very thing we despise. A bitter heart devours its owner. This is a quote from yours truly, right? I want you to talk to me about that.
Okay. So my mom and dad separated when I was, I believe, 4 years old, right? It's still kind of under 4 or 5, but 4 years old. And I was born in London, so we had just moved to California and began settling in, and just really taking the moment to also acknowledge what's happening in LA, as that used to be home for me. It's where my wife was pretty much grew up and spent most of her time. But they separated, and for the longest, the image I had of my father from what he did, according to the perspective of the 4-year-old boy, which was leave, kind of grew into resentment. And the picture that was painted about him didn't help as well. So that resentment essentially grew to hate. And I remember right before he left, these are the words that I said. I said, if you leave, I'm going to hate you. And he left.
How old were you then?
I was 4.
You were 4 when you said that.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you can remember that. Like, can you remember it
It was
vividly?
a core memory.
Yeah.
It was a core memory. We were at the dining table. I was eating Frosted Flakes with warm milk. I won't forget that. And he left, and I didn't want him to leave. That was just my own plea to get him to stay, which was extreme. Because what does a 4-year-old know about hate, right? But he left. And since that moment, over the years, like, my resentment grew, right? Partially because, one, he left, right? Again, he left me. This is what I used to believe. And then secondly, because I thought it was my fault that he left because of the words that I said. So I'm sharing this because I made a vow from the hurt and pain that I experienced from their separation that I never wanted to be like my father, right? And what I noticed over the years is that the more I resisted him, the more I became the very thing that I tried to resist. And what I mean by that is his absence, his lack of keeping his word, his hesitation, his lack of integrity. These were all qualities I start to notice I was slowly becoming, right? And it wasn't because I wanted to do that. No, it was because buried in my unconscious was the parts of him that I rejected became the parts of me that I didn't want to accept. So I'd rather him have it because he's the one that did it to me, rather than looking in the mirror and realizing that, oh, I too possess those same qualities. So if my heart is still holding resentment and bitterness towards him, as much as I think he's feeling it as my father, he's not feeling anything. I'm the one that's feeling that poison. So it was devouring me. It was eating me alive. And I got to a point where, like, I had to do something about it because it wasn't so much about what he did any longer, even though we're not dismissing that. It was more about what was real in my life. And, you know, just I was experiencing the effects of being out of harmony. I was experiencing the effects of emotional suppression. I was experiencing the effects of, the lack of integrity, not essentially living the way I wanted to live because I was still harboring a lot of energy that I was unwilling to face yet.
Oh, it's crazy. I feel like so many people just ignore that shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's intentional.
That,
I don't think it's intentional.
not at all.
No.
That's what's like where the mask comes on, where you sweep it under the rug.
It's instinctual.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we consider that we're wired for survival. When we are not educated, when we're not raised, when we're not brought up in a way that allows us to see that we are not a threat to ourselves, then we don't have the knowledge in the moment or the resources to be able to support ourselves in moving through something that essentially is seeking to help us live a lot better. So most people don't know because we default right to survival. It's not safe. My lack of my security is being threatened. The only thing I could do right now is instinctually put this on so I could protect myself. You know what I mean? So I became my father essentially to protect the hurt or protect myself from being vulnerable. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I feel like,
Yeah. I'd rather blame him
yeah.
than feel what I needed to feel.
Yeah, and be vulnerable. I feel like there's still a stigma around like I had this assumption over the last couple of years that the word vulnerability has got it sort of dissipated, right? I'm like, oh, it's dissipated. We don't really need to use it anymore because we can use the word courage. We can say something else that makes you strong, blah, blah, blah. And I've full circle gone back and been like, no, vulnerability is the thing that makes you so masculine, that makes you so powerful, that makes you so strong, whether you're a male or a female. Yeah. And I'm like, 2024 years old, right? when I realized that I was like a manipulator and a control freak that come from patterns like from my parents and having to own that and like take responsibility for it. I remember seeing it. I was in like this argument with my partner in the car and she said something towards me and actually explained it. And immediately I just went, I take responsibility for all of that. And it was just like this moment that
rush of power back. Isn't that?
Rush of power back. I need to shake a hand on that.
Rush of power, because we're giving it away, and there's something about responsibility and ownership and acceptance that helps us resolve and meet ourselves in the present, where it's like, oh, like I'm getting my energy back that I'm using to resist what I need to accept. So it's just a rush of power back. Now it's like, okay, I can actually do something about this. Yeah.
Dude, for you, what were the things that you were adopting that you were like, oh shit, I didn't see this, but now I see it. So I'm interested to hear this and also what you have been seeing around at the moment as well.
So the first thing, I mean, the qualities of what I was resisting my father for sure. Hiding was a big one.
Oh. You an example of hiding? Is that like emotional hiding, or you like behind a leaf? Like?
So there are levels to my experience of hiding. First, it was hiding spiritually. Yeah, and I'll get to it. Hiding emotionally, which essentially was expressed as hiding physically. So the series of events that took place over my life after my mom and dad separated caused me to develop a self-image and identity that essentially was rooted in what I would call the deflated ego, right? Oftentimes we like to bring attention to the inflated ego, but the deflated ego is the same thing on the opposite spectrum. Right. So I was egotistical in my own way, but more in a deflated way. So because I had so much shame about who I was, my self-image was so low. I was shy. I was timid. Self-inflicted self-doubt, like self-inflicted. And I think that has come as a result of, again, it was just growing up in an environment where I internalized making meaning about things that I wasn't responsible for, but because I didn't have positive reinforcement, I took responsibility for, quote unquote, why a lot of things were wrong. So how that played out was I was afraid of showing up. I was afraid of, being who I am now. I was afraid of taking responsibility. I was afraid of like speaking, like saying what I wanted to say or saying what I mean to say. I was afraid of using my gift of my throat chakra, which I don't feel everybody has access to. Some people they have a way to be able to communicate through words, things that someone probably does better in writing, or someone does better in artistic expression, or someone does better in business, right? And then we all have our own universal gifts. But I feel like I have a gift in being able to convey using my words. And I couldn't do that because the commitment to my ego-driven, deflated identity was bigger than the expression of my soul. And for the longest, the question would be, who am I to hold these gifts? Oh, why? Why me? Again, because my self-image was so low, so deflated. Who am I to be this person who can support people? Now, I will say, for the longest, I've known since the age of 8. That's when I could consciously remember that I loved people. I would people watch at the age of 8 years old, just be interested in what was going on within that person. I was just very, very curious. I'm still very curious. And I knew early on that I wanted to help people, right? I wanted to help them. It didn't matter how, but I just wanted to help people. Now, again, the commitment, the energetic investment in my identity that was formed as a child is what on paper prevented me from showing up the way I wanted to, but behind the scenes is also played a role in helping me be who I am today. So there's, at the end of the day, I look back, I'm like, okay, I see why it happened, right? But those are some of the ways that, I noticed it was playing out. Hiding was a big one for me. Yeah.
So when it got into like your 20s, I'm assuming that you might have had some like blocks in the story. Have you got any stories of when you kind of got to here, had to do some of the inner work? Because I know as well, like one thing that I really respect about you is, and like what I relate to you in is, and this is just like still assumption after like watching your content, is like when you get obsessed with something deep, you just go deep.
Oh yeah, I'm a rabbit.
Like you very deep, right?
I've had to learn how to pull it back, baby, come up for air. I think more now it's about, the consciousness that I'm doing it from, right? So, I'm thinking back to 20s.
Like the moment for you when it was like, it got stuck in here and then you were able to, be able to speak, and you had that moment of being like, oh, I can use my words. Because I feel like there are a lot of people that are hiding, whether it be in business, in relationships, in their families, with their fulfillment, and they don't even realize that they get stuck in here.
So here's the reality. I'm still working through it.
Oof.
All right. I can't speak for anybody else. I had my quote unquote, and I'm quoting this because it's something that's just used a lot. I had my own awakening at the age of 20. So it's been a while for me, right? And why I say that is because even when I had my awakening, you would think that that was it. It's been stages and stages and stages and stages and initiation after initiation. So to answer your question, I can't really recall. Maybe there is a moment, but what's present for me right now is I'm still working through it. And it's because I'm learning to accept that, at least on some level, right now in 2025 on the Gregorian calendar, that this is the role, or this is the expression I'm here to play and express at this moment in time in my life. Part of it is through speaking. I notice that sometimes I want to hide behind words. So if there's a way where I know I hinder myself, it's trying to be politically correct in some regard, rather than just speaking from my heart, which is 100% of the time supported me, helped. So I'm still working through it because a part of me is like, okay, again, it's that little boy that shows up. If I speak the truth in the way that is present for me right now, will that person be offended?
Oh, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
So like I get like logically, but my body understood that, but my brain was like,
Yeah. Okay. So my experience has been, again, these are things that, and I love that this is because it's helping me as well in the moment. So I've had many moments in my life where kinesthetically I feel things. Right. I've had a relationship to my own intuition for quite some time, but didn't really know how to develop it, in a stronger way because the environment I was around, at least for most of my life, I didn't find a way that it was reinforced in me. So when I look around, it wasn't really, people were really chatting about it. So a lot of times I thought that it was just kind of like a spur of the moment, kind of random thing. But as it happened and as it became reconfirmed and noticing that, oh, there's this thing that you do or you feel, right? I started to like work with it a bit. So there have been many times in my life where I'd just be around people and I'd feel. And then without proper awareness, I'd just say. And I would watch the person's response. And maybe it's not what they felt, but it's what my own ego interpreted as wrong. And the more that happened, I would stay quiet because the last thing I wanted to do was not hurt them. So if I perceived that they were offended, I took it personal as me doing something wrong towards them.
oh yeah.
So I continue to gaslight myself for the sake of pleasing how somebody would feel because I didn't want to hurt them. Now it was in a noble place, but the cost was still stifling the truth, at least from my perspective. So this took work over the years, and I'm still working on it, where I learned, and I'm still learning, to connect first, stay connected first, and then ask for permission. Because once I ask for permission, then what I share, it's not up to me any longer. As long, obviously, I'm not trying to hurt or harm them, but as long as I ask for permission, then I could share with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest thing for me is like sometimes my expression, I judge it. I've judged it as too much.
There's a lot there that's something people can relate to. I feel like in my experience of that is I didn't want to admit it to myself.
Yeah.
That was there.
Yeah.
And like that wearing other people's emotions
Yep.
is so much stronger than what I thought. So I think the asking for permission is so powerful.
Yeah.
And then that last thing that you said, like,
Yeah, man. I think the biggest thing for that, I think the last thing I said has been the biggest thing for me is not trying to take on someone else's reaction as my own.
oh God. Yeah, I know that. It's been my whole 2024 was that, bro.
And really like just owning just who I am in the moment. And I mean, and I'll share this in a bit. That started when I was like a year and a half old. I'll kind of get into the story in a bit. But yeah, I noticed how hypervigilant I was to how I was being received. Right? And for me, a lot of times, maybe it was my own interpretation. Maybe it was my own projection being reflected back to me. And I think 9 times out of 10, it was actually my own projection. It really had barely anything to do with anybody else, but it was what was being reflected back to me, which was, again, the parts of myself that I didn't want to accept, which is my subtle and calm intensity. And when I say the too muchness, I'm not like a loud and boisterous individual. That's not me, right? That's probably how somebody else operates. That's not how I operate. Like, naturally, I'm just
Yeah, you just there. You seem chill but extroverted.
Both. I could swing. I'm pretty introverted. Yeah. I actually like. I think everyone is an ambivert.
Yeah.
They're a little bit of both. They may, some people may be more 60% introverted and they're 40%. I think we're a little bit of both, and it all depends on the environment that we're in at the time. But yeah, in certain moments, I'm 100% introverted. That's when I'm going down rabbit holes. I don't want to be bothered by anybody. But there's moments where, because I love people, I want to be around them, right? I want to have that shared experience. I want to feel community. So it's a bit of both. But yeah, I'm not loud. That's not just how I am. There are moments where I can be. I've known how to kind of dance within the spectrum of my human expression. But my baseline is I like just being chill.
Yeah.
Again, I've had experiences where, it's all about my own self-image, where I've taken somebody's word too seriously about how they are essentially interpreting me. I'm intense a lot. And it's not like
Is this when you're in the gym, or is it just you think a deep thought, or?
No, it could be anything. And luckily for friends and, the work that I've done, I've learned that maybe sometimes it is me, but intensity isn't wrong or bad.
I feel you in that.
Yeah.
So much, bro.
And I think a lot of times what I've learned, it took a really close friend to help me understand this. He said, Samson, there are a lot of people in the world who can't handle the tension of duality. It's either black or white for them. And he said, when you are able to be so vulnerable, honestly raw. And I had to develop that, because that's what vulnerability is. It's just honesty, bro. Right? If you resist vulnerability, that means you resist telling the truth. Come on, y'all. And he says you're able to just be vulnerable and say what's happening in your life, and then just go right back. I think for a lot of people, they can't handle that because they are still moving through their own level of self-acceptance of what's happened. And I'll say this on the record. That's something that I'm learning to still work through as it relates to having the people in my life that can actually hold me. Sure, I could, as a leader, you, as someone who possibly supports people and holds for people, a lot of times it's tough for people in our position to, I don't want to speak for you, so I'm going to kind of speak for myself. It's tough for someone in my position to trust that I can fully just, without that individual collapsing. So what I've had to learn to do is have people in my world that I can trust to do that. And that helps me better yet deal with not having to kind of be hypervigilant in an environment where I don't feel well received. And it's helped me let go of some of the conditioning and self-judgment about my own intensity and quote unquote too muchness. And I'll get to this story if we ever get there, but that started when I was super young. Yeah.
Crazy. Samson, I'm going to ask you a question that you asked. Right, I'm going to flick it back to you.
Oh yeah, good. Good.
What if you're stuck in this belief because you aren't seeing the reward you get from it?
Yep. What part do you want me to answer that with? Could I have many?
Just your thoughts on that question, whatever
Yes.
first comes up.
So I'll speak to the whole hiding thing.
Yeah.
Everything. And there's no layers of complexity to this. Sure, okay. We'll say out of 100%, there's probably 2% complexity and nuance to this. I like to see, on some level, I have an understanding that everything is working for us. Everything. There's nothing we decide, choose, or do, whether consciously or unconsciously, that doesn't have a benefit to us. Now, that benefit on paper may not look supportive or healthy, but it's still benefiting something. That's why we consistently do it. Why I consistently hid in plain sight, why I consistently suppress some of my natural gifts, why I consistently kind of, was shy and timid, is the benefit I got from it was, one, it prevented me from taking responsibility. Where there's responsibility, there's power. So it prevented me from stepping into my power. Where there's power, there's duty. So now, if I didn't take responsibility to accept my power, then I don't have to step up and live in my purpose, which comes with even more responsibility. So for me, it was easier to hide, right, in the story and the belief that I wasn't enough, that I was too much, that I was this, that I was that, because the investment and the identity was bigger than being in my purpose. And it's not because I wanted it that way. No, it was because that identity was actually supporting moments of my life where I did not feel safe. So those beliefs, like minimizing myself, demonizing myself, that was to placate and please the egos of the people in my environment. If I lower myself, if I dim my light, that means I won't irritate my mother or my father. That means that when I don't irritate them or activate them or make them feel a certain way that threatens my safety and survival, well, then maybe love will still be available for me. See what I mean? So the cost for me, or the price or the reward, was the illusion of love I thought I was getting by minimizing myself. If I people please, if I hide, if I play the hero, if I play the savior, if I'm perfect, if I'm calm on the outside, then maybe people won't leave, like my dad did. And maybe love will be available for me.
How do you think this plays out with adults?
Oh,
Like,
my observation, and this is just from working with many people, the basis of my work always comes down to the inner child that was left behind. Someone can come in because, they probably want to work on their breath, or someone could come in because they want to work on their physical health, or someone can come in because, they're experiencing tension in their body. Someone could come in because they're having relationship problems. Everything comes back to that inner child that was left behind. And how it plays into adults today is, my observation is that many adults today are wounded children who never really got a chance to transition into adulthood. I was that little wounded boy in the adult body, in reality. And from the ages of 0 to 7 is usually when it happens, is when our ego forms, the identity forms. And it's from those ages our perspective and view of the world and the view of ourselves is created. A lot of times, if we don't resolve some of those issues or challenges that were experienced in our upbringing from those ages, that plays out into adulthood. And what that looks like is, it's the high achiever who is constantly going and going and going and next and next and next, that doesn't know the performance is rooted in maybe a time where achieving was the only way to get attention.
Why are you talking to me right now, bro?
I've been there. Or the woman who constantly has to overexpress herself and possibly, and I'm being mindful with my words here, show up in a way because of the lack of attention and love she got. These are all aspects, not all, mostly aspects of an inner child, a little boy, a little girl, that became who they had to become to receive the love they didn't get when they were being themselves and was rejected. So I go back to myself when I was 1.5 years old, and my father had just been done drinking from a wine glass.
You remember this?
I remember aspects of it, and then I've confirmed this story with my mom multiple times. Like I literally just talked to her about it mid last year because I'm always in reflection about, okay, where I'm at. So I'm like, okay, Mom, tell me this story again, because I want to hear it again. So 1.5 years old, my dad had just been done drinking a wine glass, and my mom said, I picked up the wine glass. I didn't throw it. I didn't bang it. I wasn't over aggressive with the glass. She said, I just put my hand in it and the glass shattered. Okay? For them, coming from a Nigerian background, I would say they were pretty taken aback. And they said every time they would call me my name, Samson, that was my birth name, that I'd be hyper. So they took it upon themselves to make the executive decision to stop calling me my name, because, and this is what she said on the phone verbatim mid last year, she said, your power was too much for us.
My hand's been hot as you said that, bro.
And now, obviously, looking back, I know my mom, she didn't have any ill will towards it. It was just, it was in the best interest of her and what she thought was best to stop calling me that. Yeah, my mom is highly spiritual, so I can possibly, maybe, I don't understand from that level why she made that decision. But now you can, and this is for everybody listening, right, or watching. We have memories or we can access memories from previous lifetimes. But we remember everything, let's just say as it relates to this lifetime, from the moment we were in our mother's wombs. We may not have access to it consciously, but the memory is there. And why I share that is because even as 1.5 years old, I felt that from my mom, from my dad. I felt that I was too much. Even though she later admitted it, I felt it. So not being called the name that I was given at birth, and it wasn't just given a name just to be given a name. In my culture, at least it's some aspect of my culture, there was a prophet in the spiritual community and church that I grew up in, that was appointed to me to meditate on my behalf. We had naming ceremonies. And that was the name that was given to me from above, right? And my mom or my parents stopped calling me that. Like, what's your name?
Corey.
Corey, right? So when I say Corey, it's not just a name.
Yeah.
I'm commanding your attention.
Yeah. Summons me.
It summons your energy.
Yeah.
Right? I stopped being called the very energetic signal
Yeah.
that summoned
Who you are.
me.
Yeah, bro.
So on that level, I was dimmed. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So imagine now, that was at least maybe one of other experiences. I'm now growing up with the belief or the identity, or I formed the identity that, oh, if I'm too much for my mother and my father, who is the world to me, like our parents are the world to us.
Yeah.
That's who we pedestalize. That's who God is for us, our parents.
Yeah.
If I'm too much for God, what does that mean? So now you can see how that, if not resolved or healed, will be carried into my adult life where the need to hide still shows up.
Yeah, I think that and the feeling of no matter what you do,
It's not enough.
just never.
Nope, because I'm not enough for God. I'm not enough for my mom. I'm not enough for my dad. And that was the belief that I had. It's not enough for my mom or my father. And in fact, it went even deeper. I felt too much for this world and not enough for the other world. So too much for people here and not enough for God. So I was caught in the middle of wrestling. Where the fuck am I? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, there's just been a lot of reconciliation and resolution that's been done in that regard. And a lot of it had to do with just facing the aspects that I learned to reject in myself due to the lack of acceptance from my environment.
Man.
Which at the end of the day, they didn't know any better. But what a journey to go on to learn how to remember my power.
And claim it. You must look at your children with just such a...
Fuck, man.
You must look at your kids from knowing all this stuff and just going so deep and having your own healing. You must just see them in a way.
They bring up emotion every time, man. The moment you said it's your children.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk to me about it.
You know, what I will say is that I didn't doubt or hide 100% of the time, right? There was still a deeper part of me that knew I was created for more. It was just very challenging to get through because of the commitment to the belief in the identity that was rooted in, honestly, survival, because that's what it really was. But the level of just transformation that I'm committed to and still committed to for me personally, I'm realizing even more is why the souls of my kids chose me.
Mm.
And they are, outside of my wife, they are two of the greatest blessings I've ever received. Now, fatherhood is challenging on its own, but fatherhood is an initiation that pulls something out of you as a man that I don't believe anything else can. I don't believe anything else can. Someone dear to me once said, it's like having a child is like watching your heart run around outside of you. And to know that I am capable and entrusted by God, because I know I don't own them. I know I was chosen to guide them. To know I've been entrusted to guide these souls, for me, is one of the greatest and ultimate duties that I have. So when I hear that, and also just every day, the overwhelming love that they have to give is just a reminder of what's available if I'm willing to just be present. What I've learned, because my first daughter is 6, is that at every age of her growth, what I have not, based on the necessity of it needing to come up, what I have not faced in my childhood, she brings up for me.
Ooh.
So at year 1, if there's something there from a year old, it comes up. There was nothing between year 1 and year 2. Year 3, though, 3 years old, something came up. And it was around, and I'll never forget this day. My wife had left. And it was just me and her for 4 days. And in those 4 days, I was more reactive than I'd ever been with her. And I'm like, Samson, what the fuck is going on with you? Like, why are you reacting to your daughter? And to a point where her voice would irritate me. I was like, nah, this is not good. And I remember taking her grocery shopping. We went to the supermarket, and I had her in the cart. And if you see, my first daughter, she's a girl's girl, like sweet. Like we knew she was a nurturer since she was like very little. She's so sweet. She looks at me and she places her hand on my chest. And the first thing I do is I get defensive.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, all right, there's something here that I really got to work on. So we get home and I put her to bed and I just sat in and reflected. And what came forward for me was the little boy in me felt activated by the fact that she got to ask whatever she wanted. She got to be whoever she wanted. She got to do whatever she wanted. The freedom she got as a child, he felt he didn't get. And it was kind of interesting to father my little boy while fathering my daughter.
Dude, it's like that cosmic joke, isn't it? Of being like, oh, we're here to guide and look at the children and everything. But then they're just teaching the shit out of you. It's like, hey, thanks for coaching me directly, guys.
Oh, they're. So I realized in that moment, like, oh, got it. And she just, because even though she's 6, right? She still has this innocence and purity to her that I'm challenged by still. I'm still challenged by it because of the freedom she has to just express herself. And I'm noticing even parts of myself that I've not given myself permission to do so. So I'm learning to learn from my daughter while guiding her. You see what I mean? So that's why, it's outside of all that, it's just the love that they are. It's the love. And it's the reminder of where we all come from and where we're all going to go back to. Yeah.
Move what's heavy with a light heart.
Yeah. This has been a big one for me too. I've had a tendency to just take life a bit more seriously and too seriously at times.
Yeah. Is that like the intensity part comes up? For you?
No, I think intensity just, it's my nature. And without making it mean anything, again, intensity is subjective.
Yeah, very true.
What's intense for me may not be intense for you. And I think what I've made intense was how people perceived me.
Okay.
My mom, right?
Yeah.
Or my parents. And then people that would literally look in my eyes and like, for a long time, like I judge myself because so you met me for the first time. I'm 6 foot, jacked as shit, take care of myself, long hair, right? I could carry myself in a certain way. For some people, again, this is probably my projection, that's unexpected. You know what I mean? So, but I will also say, which is reflective of like what I've been able to do, two of the best compliments I've ever received, ever. And I don't make them mean anything. I just, kind of take them and just reflect upon them. One from men was that you look like you'll fuck somebody up. So I'm like, okay, cool. If I need to protect my family, I can protect my family, right? But they both came from men and women. There's that. And then the other was, I feel safe around you. And I think that is predicated upon the level of safety I feel within my own agency and constitution, right? But I've had a tendency to take things really seriously. And I'm still learning again, right? That the work never ends. Because life never ends. There's no beginning. It's a continuous evolution and process unfolding forever. And we're caught in this momentary physical dimension to experience that ever unfolding in the way we're meant to during this very blip in time. And to continuously like rest and accept that is, how can I know that even through the quote unquote heaviness that may show up in my life, how can I do it with a light heart? And what I've learned is that as long as I'm willing to keep my heart open, it remains light. If I don't, then just like a dam prevents water from flowing, I'm causing the weight or the burden to be heavier the more I'm resisting the flow of energy that's meant to move through my heart. So that looks like just being present with what comes up. That looks like breathing, feeling my body. That looks like consciously interrupting ways that fear may want to show up, even though it may want to serve and protect me, but slowing down enough to the speed of what is being shown to me in the present so I can bring my heart back into the room. That is what has worked. And also to know that, and this is just a reminder that I get from my children a lot, is that if it's a big cosmic joke, why am I not laughing?
Oof.
Right? If it's a big cosmic joke, why am I not laughing? Unless I've made it something else.
I relate to you so much with that seriousness part, man.
Yeah.
And that not laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love to laugh. I'm a big goofball. And that's the other side of it.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest goofball ever.
Yeah.
But sometimes I notice.
Like turn it off.
And I think it's a level of responsibility that I bear for the duty that I feel I'm here to carry out. But I also think it's important to have moments where I can remember that, hey, bro, you're here for a moment in time. Be who you're here to be, but be mindful not to take it so seriously. Yeah.
Wow. I know you like Carl Jung. You've read out some of his quotes before. I'm gonna read a different one to you though, right? I just want to see your opinion on this because I'm a Jung fan as well. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? I want to hear your perception on that in regards to men.
Yeah. Okay, what's coming forward for me? I think it's natural for men who are deemed to be more masculine beings, because both men and women have masculine or feminine energies within them. the men who are even young said there's about 60-40 or 70-30 energetics as it relates to each man and woman. So we're deemed to be more masculine beings. It's masculine to be external.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is, so if we're looking at the energies if we're looking at masculine and feminine dynamics from the solely energetic perspective, masculine is an external energy. It's externally expressed. Look at how our sexual organs are designed. It's out, right? It's giving, we're reaching, we're extending. So it's an external expression. So I think it's our nature to be external. But because we also possess feminine energy, I think it's important for us to remember that real change and transformation is internal. To wake up, to awaken, is not to rely on your eyesight, which is to see externally, but to connect with your insight, which is coming from a world that is before what is seen. The tendency to resist going internal, I think, is from the fear of what men are going to find there.
Yeah, this is where men get caught in the trap of tick boxing.
Yes.
Right? There's I'm doing the next thing and I do the next thing and do the next thing. I can start the business, get the goal, do the stuff, whatever, and then fulfillment. They turn to drugs, turn to alcohol because they're trying to feel something. They'll turn to making their partner God to try to feel something out of them. They'll become too attached.
Yep. Well, back to that conversation of, and we'll direct this at men. That man, probably, highly likely, still has a little boy within him that's operating from survival, that created an identity that thought that he needed to build, have, achieve all these externally based things to fill the void that is present from the experience or experiences he has as a child that he couldn't resolve.
And what I'm seeing recently in regards to exactly that is that men in that position choose women who do not nurture them.
Of course. Of course.
And then they get fucked up.
Of course. And it's not even so much nurture them. Oh, okay. They choose dynamics. There's nuance to this. I think they choose dynamics that in some cases reflect not knowing how to receive love.
Oh, yeah.
So if I get the money, if I do the business, then maybe I'll be good enough, aka lovable.
Just approval addicts, baby.
Right? So every spiritual tradition has said it. I don't care where you go on the face of this planet. Every spiritual tradition has said this, has literally had this principle baked into their culture for eons. That it is an inner game. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Not outside of you, within you. And everything external that is created or manifested, because that word is thrown around so much, right, is predicated upon what is happening internally. So it can look great on the outside. This is why I also don't rely on what my eyes show me, or I also don't rely on what my mind tells me. My mind without my heart is just a one-sided relationship with a part of me that is rooted in suffering that I'm going to experience or haven't experienced yet. Feeling
how does it feel? I could have all these things externally, but if I'm disconnected from it, then what is it really worth? How do I feel about it? That's the question. So to that saying about young, for me, because it's rung true for me, I've awoken when I've connected with the parts of me internally, right? The soul, the voice of God, the whispers of my intuition, because that's where true fulfillment lies, right? I'm not, because I like to use visuals. And even though I love that these are here fiddles, trees are some of my greatest teachers. They're very simple, but the wisdom is profound. We see these trees here, and what do you notice?
This one's fake as shit.
Well, let's say they were real.
But yeah,
they're real. Yeah, I didn't want to put them on blast.
Sorry, Corey, in his studio. These plates are fake, baby. So what I noticed when I first look at them is like there's green, there's sticks, and it looks like the leaves have veins that go through them.
Yep. So there's leaves, there are the sticks, there are the branches.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, they got some sort of vein system. They grow randomly. When I know trees, I always have this thing that I told as a kid. It's like the way that their branches grow out is to like drop water onto the roots. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Other than that, they stick to the ground and they're older than me.
Yep.
Like that's probably the main things I see. Sometimes I look at trees and I'm like, oh man, you've been on this earth for so long that I've ever been, and you're going to be here for so much longer than I've ever going to been. Sometimes I'm like running through rainforest. I'm like, oh, that tree is old, baby. And then I start thinking about death, and I'm like, all right, we're going to shake this. But that's about as deep as I get.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you can see, okay, let's say these were real. So it looks like they're healthy, right? So, okay, the leaves could represent maybe the amount of money you've made. Yeah. Or maybe the partner you have at home, or maybe the car you're driving, right? So this is like what you can see. Or maybe the box of things you've achieved, or the quota that you've hit, or whatever else. But very seldomly do we realize that everything we see is based upon everything that's happened underground.
There's like immediately I just thought of like the world tree in terms of a symbol of like the Norse world tree of like the tree coming up. I was like, the deeper the roots to hell, the higher the branches go to heaven. Yeah.
And the tree awakens because of what's happening in the unseen. So the willingness to go in the dark and reach your roots down in the unseen, in the internal, will determine everything that exists above ground or in the external. So no matter what you have on the outside or what's being shown, the health of it, the true health of it, will be determined upon how healthy the roots are. Again, for us, that's the internal world.
You got to clean them roots out, baby. Because if they're messy and they're destroyed and they're rotten, I feel you when you said about the poison. It's like if you're poisoned from the root up, you know, it's all gonna.
Well, and there's a tendency to want to fix an external issue with an external solution. Oh, I'm everything I'm saying like is right.
Who, me?
If the fruit's fucked up,
Yeah.
you don't go to try to fix the fruit. Where is the lack of harmony, balance, or health in my roots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because, like, if I was to give something like practical in terms to people, it's like, what do you do about this, right? The first is you just talk about it. So the first thing to start is talk about it.
Yes.
And look and take responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like someone can reflect you. You did this, and you have that moment of being when your body goes no, and you feel like there's resistance, and then you're like, ugh. Like we've found there's guys in my community, because I have like a men's community, where they'll come in and they'll want to bail. Like it's 3-4 months in, they've signed up for a year.
It's coming up.
And they're like,
All the shit's coming
they're like, fuck this.
All the shit's coming up.
I'm out. right? You know, I'm out. I don't want to look at this. I don't want to face this. I don't want to have to like move through it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like every single person who has stayed and faced it and like gone into that, had that moment where I've actually been held by the other dudes. And this is just talking. And they just have to, literally, it's like they just have to admit something to themselves in front of other people, regulates their nervous system, and then they go and do something big afterwards that they've always wanted to do. And they've reaped the rewards of it. And it's crazy to see. Or some people have to go and do something that they don't want to do, but they know that they've, you know, tied a knot somewhere they have to unleave, and they're like, fuck, I wish I didn't know this because now I have to go and do this difficult thing. But it's like, well, you can stay in the same place for the next 30 years if you wanted to. Or you could go and untie the knot. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. I mean, even that, especially for men. I mean, there are numbers to speak to this. Men are more likely to commit this. Well, they are committing suicide at a 4 times higher rate than women. And it's not anything novel, right? Sure, there are layers of complexity there, and it's subjective based on that personal experience of that man. But a lot of it is connected to holding on to burdens that they feel they have to bear alone. And the world has never been like that. Because principles, and I'm not saying the world's perfect, that's what I'm saying. But when I say the world hasn't been like that is because I study a lot and I'm connected to a lot of ancient cultures and practices. Fortunately enough, like my culture and practice, there's a lot of things I look back now as an adult. I was like, oh, that's why we do that.
We got like just 2 or 3 quick examples of like some cultural shit.
Community.
Yep.
Community.
Yep.
In the West, there is this culture. I don't even want to call it a culture, right? Where there is this need for hyper individualism.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a reason or need to be self-sufficient or independent, but independence without other people is just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode because we need each other. So where's the fine line of both? Interdependence. So what we're experiencing right now, we're seeing it. I'm saying it looks like the world is going to shit, at least from the West. No, I'm like, no, we're just going through the cycles and rebalancing of the lack of harmony we've had for so long. So hyper individualism is counterproductive to the need for community that can serve as compassionate witnesses for a man to know that he's not alone. A lot of the men that I know have committed suicide is because of the thought or the idea that they've had to bear the burden all by themselves. Some of them were depressed. And depression, from a non-clinical pathology perspective, because that's another thing, by the way, in my culture, a lot of ancient indigenous practices, there is a remedy for depression. They know at that moment, oh, okay.
Is this Nigerian culture?
This is Nigerian African culture, yes. Which is, and when I say Nigerian culture, I'm also saying Nigerian culture before colonization, right? They know, okay, when that person's off, there is a crack in the community somewhere.
Oh, shit. I love that.
Because
I love that.
the community produces the individual,
Yeah.
just like the individual produces the community. So if that person's going through it, the community is going through it. Whereas here, if I'm going through something, I feel like I'm the only one. So that's why for men, when they see that they're not alone, it dissipates.
Yeah, it just goes, doesn't it?
It just goes because like, oh, this is an us thing.
Yeah, it's not a me thing.
This is an us thing.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. Have you ever read fantasy books? You ever read novels like
I used to.
Used to?
I'm just too much of a nonfiction buff, but I think I need to just for my own imagination.
I found I had to because I was reading so much heavy shit that I was like, I need to listen to something fun for a while.
Yeah.
And do you know the Red Rising series?
Have I heard? No.
It's fantastic. It's like it's kind of like a Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, about like 10,000 years in the future, and they've colonized the planets out into like Pluto. So we've got.
I think I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's really cool. But there's a moment in there that just reminds me of this story that was really powerful, where one of the guys was learning leadership, and he learned how to be a dictator in like the schools of is the main character of the schools of teaching them how to like graduate and be leaders in like the planetary system. And then he defied it because he was like, all of this is wrong. Like, this is the worst type of leadership. And he was trying to like whoop these like dudes that were underneath him, like whoop their ass so that they could be good in their tribe. Because he's like, I want to have the best tribe and I want to win this thing, and we got to do this because people's lives are at stake. And one of the guys that he was like leading just fucks up in the worst way and like just ruins the people, like ruins some of their own teammates in a real bad way. So what he did instead, because he's still talented, was he like lashed him like 50 lashes in front of all the people. And then he's like, now me, and takes his off because he's like, I'm such a shit leader. And is like, I get the lashes too. And then he just get like his ass whooped, right? And then he's like, we bear the load together. And then the guy the one who like stepped out of line, like never stepped out of line again.
Well, again,
Beautiful story on that.
so this is why. In my interpretation from what you're saying. So the farther we are away from God, the more laws we need.
Ooh.
The closer we are to God, the less laws we need. And when we look at the golden rule, or the very simple yet principle that I think every culture is expressed, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Or Ubuntu, which is pretty much you are me and I am you, right? Or love thy neighbor as you love yourself. There's these consistent principles that are pretty much saying that you are me and I am you. And what I do to me, I do to you. And what you do to you, you do to me. So I think we've gotten to a point where we are so disconnected from ourselves that it's leaked out to how we treat other people. I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, it's just so simple, but this is probably why it isn't carried out. The law or the principle of love thy neighbor as you love yourself. Well, the standard is how you love yourself. And if you're disconnected from who you are, and if you're resisting part of yourself, and if you're denying any part of your humanity, that's fear occupying those aspects of who you are. And there's no love there. So if there's no love there, there's judgment. When there's judgment, there's survival. When we're surviving, there's no connection. So if I can't love myself, how can I have the capacity to have what I get to give my neighbor? This is why the work is important, because what we do for us, we do for everyone else. And what you do for everyone else, you do for yourself. So I could see that. It's like when that guy that stepped out of line saw the consequences of his actions that caused his leader to have to go through that suffering, is like, there's nothing much to say. Like, I don't want to cause that much pain to somebody else again.
Yeah.
Bro, and it's like, this is why we get to do the work. And I don't say that as loosely as just doing the work, because again, that's another story. Yeah, it's like, it's important during this time for the livelihood of not just ourselves, but also the planet we live on.
Yeah, I feel like we're the transitionary generation. Like, I feel like there was a stuck one in this transition, and then like our children's children, from my perspective, just get to be so free, right? It's like we're the ones I feel like that are really bringing this consciousness stuff in. Like, I thought like they tried to in like the 1940s of all the philosophy, the East and the Western philosophy, but because of how everything was set up, it was just like too difficult to get it through.
Industry.
The industry was like so hard to get it through, even though that was like where philosophy was created, you know, like the yin and the yang between like industry is crazy, but look at all this shit like these people are learning, like it's fucking insane. And like we get to transition that. I'm going to just mention some things quickly, right? Some quick things, and I want some quick answers from this one, because we're getting to the end. Because I feel like we're warming up now, and I want to like keep going. I'm like, fuck, I got like 3 more hours worth of questions to ask you. God damn. So I was going to say some things like real quickly, right? Fear, resistance, relationships, and patterns. What's the relationship between those in your opinion? Quick answer.
Say that again.
Fear, resistance, relationships, and patterns. What is the relationship between these, in your opinion?
What comes up for me is the need to survive.
Purpose. How do you find it?
You don't need to find it. You are it. You just need to listen.
Connection. How do you express it?
Get your ego out of the way. Bring your heart back in the room.
Business. How do I feel it?
Bring your soul back into it.
Fitness. Why is it important?
Because your body is the conduit, bridge, and vessel for your soul to express and be who it's here to be. So beyond just vanity, your health and well-being supports the very channel you have, so you can receive higher wisdom and ground it in your body to embody who you're here to be.
Samson Odesanya, why are you here?
You know, I want to give you this, even the answer that's in the present, that's well thought out, that's behind words. I'm here to love. I'm here to give it. I'm here to receive it. And I'm here to be a reminder to myself when I'm not in it. I'm here to be a micro expression of God in my own way, just like everybody is in their own way. And I'm here to collect wisdom and lessons that my soul thought was necessary in this moment in time.
Where can people find you and get involved in your work?
Talking about transition. We're in a lot of transition right now as it relates to business, and I'm not hiding. So there are things that are being revamped on a more professional level, but currently right now it's on Instagram. So Samsons_strength.com. If there's any interest to work or even have questions or you're curious, I'm somebody that loves to respond to people and, have conversations. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming onto the show, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, bro. Holy shit.